Yeah. Thank you for taking the ride on the Freedom Train podcast. I'm your host, Glyph Award. I'm riding solo today, but you know I don't always, so it's all good. The Freedom Train is brought to you by PAX Inc. That's PACTSINC. And PAX Inc. is a black advocacy organization aimed at developing the black community to its maximum potential through a focus on education and economics with the traits of hard work, honesty, and integrity. And as you know, for more information, make sure you visit www.pactsinc.org. That way you can learn more about the members of PAC Inc. And also go to the tab that says the code, so you can click on it and learn more about the codes of conduct that PAX Inc. created for Black America to help Black America work more better as a cohesive unit. Also, as you know, subscribe to the Freedom Train on iTunes and Google Play. That way you can get the episodes coming directly to your phone. Visit the Freedom Train website at www.freedomtrainradio.com to learn more about myself, my co-hosts Patrick Irvin and Jamie Basham. Follow the Freedom Train on Twitter at Freedom Train Net. Follow us on Instagram at Freedom Train Network. Like our Facebook page. And always, last but not least, subscribe to our Freedom Train YouTube channel. That way you can stay plugged into whatever we got going on the Freedom Train, as you know. Because we like having fun and we like making sure that you stay informed on what's going on in the community and the great people that we have in our community. So as you always know, we got a reputation for having great people on our show. And today is no exception. When we reach out, we really reach out. So today we have, I'm excited because we get to delve into the world of comics. We have the creator of the Afrocentric comics, Miss Jules Smith. She's a writer, a culture worker, an educator, and this magazine that she has, Afrocentric, is an award-winning magazine. And just to give you a little more information about Jules before she speaks, she has given talks about the relationship between using comics to address racial issues, gender equality, political literacy, and humor at the Schomburg Center, New York Comic-Con, Studio Museum of Harlem, Baltimore Book Festival, and the Cooper Union. As I said, she uses her practice to focus on the links between racial justice, gender equality, and political literacy. And without further ado, our studio audience, give her a hand for Jules Smith, the creator of the Afrocentric comics.
Man,
how you doing?
Thank you for that warm reception. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you for your creation, for what you're doing, what you're bringing to this world for our people. Thank you very much. I'm excited. So let's get into it. So as I said, you are the creator and the writer of the Afrocentric comic book series. So could you give us a little more background information about yourself and how you became interested in starting your own comic book as a black woman?
Yeah, so Afrocentric really was birthed out of my experiences teaching at community colleges in the Bay Area.
Okay.
And what I learned very quickly is that a lot of my students responded quite well to the comic books I was giving them. I was actually teaching a class that focused on the prison industrial complex. And what I noticed is that my students would read the comic books, but they wouldn't necessarily read the long essays that I gave them.
Right.
So it was really in that moment that I started to shift the way that I thought about reaching, students more specifically, but also a greater audience. So comic books really became this medium that I used to try to reach more people. And I was using this comic book called The Real Cost of Prisons. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. But it's a 3-part series that delves into, why the U.S. is the greatest incarcerator in the world. And it has a little history on the war on drugs. It also focuses on women in prison, who are the fastest growing prison population, and prison towns. And it really breaks down a complicated social phenomenon. And what I realized is that my students were not only reading it, but they were actually passing it on to their family members. And that was really kind of like an aha moment for me. So, in that moment of teaching at Laney College in Oakland was really where I got inspired to start to do my own comic book. And I originally intended it to be a curriculum, but then it turned out to be, closer to me thinking about my own experiences. And I loosely based two of the main characters off of myself and my brother, Naima and Miles Pepper.
Yeah. I had a chance to read up on the characters, and I kind of want to get your take. We'll go more into it, but off top already, I really love Naima and Kwame, so just off top. Right. And especially because in my group of friends, they say I'm the one with the spontaneous Tourette's or something like that. So any character that has that as well, that's me. That's me.
Yes, definitely.
So you're also, like I said earlier, you're also a writer. So just focusing on you as a writer for right now, how long have you been writing? What inspired you to write? And when did you first realize that your writing was good enough for you to pursue your dreams?
It was never a moment where I was thinking like, I want to be this, award-winning writer. It wasn't that kind of propelled me into this. It was really, wanting to respond to some of the things that were going on in the world and tell stories that were humorous about issues that are not so humorous.
Right.
So that was really the goal. It wasn't like, oh, I'm a writer and I just need to get this writing out. That was never really my motivation. The impulse has always been to use humor to talk about issues that are tough.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get that because especially now the climate in the country now, it's real tough to talk about certain things, even though I do feel like it has gotten significantly better, but it's still kind of tough to talk about things. But in that medium of comedy, using that comedy, we are able to, bring people together and sit down and kind of really talk about issues. You're not really talking, but you're talking about them. But the manner that is given to you, it makes it easier for people to digest. So. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really like the power of humor. And it wasn't something that I thought about originally as I was writing, but over time it became this thing that, really like a tool to say things that are hard to say, but saying them in a humorous way allows people to kind of let their guard down.
Right.
And that was really like the focus of a lot of the later part of HAfrocentric.
Okay. And also, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about your experience as a teacher, as I'm listening to you, kind of, give you your kudos for being a teacher who actually pays attention to her students and the different ways that they take in information, because not many teachers do that. I know through my experiences in school, not many of my teachers really paid attention to the different ways that we learned. So I definitely have to give you credit for that, because I can guarantee you the impact that had on those students' lives really helped them become a lot more successful than they probably would have been. But you paid attention to that, so that's I appreciate that just as a citizen. You doing that as an instructor, because most instructors, well, I'm not gonna say most, but a lot don't. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, like, for me, when I was teaching, I was a young teacher, and I really wanted to have this impact that a lot of the professors that I had on me. So I came in like, yo, I'm about to tell you about the revolution. Like, your whole mindset is going to change. And that really didn't happen. And so I realized that I didn't have the tools that I thought I did, because to have a level knowledge and information is one thing, but to be able to disseminate it and have solid pedagogy really helps. And that was something that I didn't have, and so I had to kind of learn that myself.
Yes. Now, that's important because we talk about that a lot here on the show, about being able to, like I said, accumulate information, knowledge and information, but how can you disseminate it to the people who you're trying to get this information to? Does it make sense to them? Can you really effectively communicate this information? And being able to see that in yourself and adjust that, that's a credit to yourself as well. It's like it's not ego driven. You're not there just for a paycheck or for ego. You're actually there for the students. So.
I don't think anybody in teaching is there for a paycheck.
Right. So as you are also a cultural worker. So this is my first time hearing this term. So could you explain to me and our listeners what a cultural worker is, and how did you become active as a cultural worker?
When I use that word to describe myself, I just think of it as someone who's trying to shift culture or change culture.
Okay.
And so I see that happening through, the comic strip and the comic book.
Okay.
Afrocentric.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because one, you come with, African American culture, black culture in America is one of the most popular cultures, one of the cultures that kind of push other cultures to be more creative or even look at African American culture. So you're taking that approach, especially with your comic books, because comics are big and it's growing, and a lot more black people are admitting that they're into comics and also getting into comics. So that using that medium is a great medium. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. So digging more into the comic books, I want to know more about it. So we touched on it earlier about some of your characters. So can you tell us more about the characters in your book, what their names are, and what role did they play in you telling the story that you're telling in each comic?
Yeah. So basically, Afrocentric follows 4 kind of disgruntled undergrads of color as they navigate this fictitious university, Ronald Reagan University, that's, based in Oakland, California.
Okay.
And Naima Pepper and Miles Pepper are brother and sister. They kind of have differing views of the world. Naima Pepper thinks of herself in the vein of, the Angela Davises, Bell Hooks, Audre Lordes of the world. And Miles Pepper is a little bit more apathetic. I really took a lot of cues from the Boondocks and the Huey character and the Riley character and that sort of balance between them.
Right.
And so, but again, like I said, I loosely based it off of myself and my brother. And so I use those characters to really, I originally started using them as ways to talk about different political philosophies, but then I realized that was a little bit too static and kind of came off really didactic, right? So it's like, I believe this and I'm, hard line this way. And so what I tried to do later in the books is really provide a level of nuance to each character and introduce contradictions. Okay. And that was something that I, as a writer, my background was more in academic writing, so this was new to me. So it was a kind of shift for me to really try to humanize each character. So they each have best friends that we follow as well. One of the other characters is Elizondo, and he's best friends with Miles, and Renee is the best friend of Naima. And so we see them in a lot of different scenes kind of interacting, and they each have their own differing kind of views on the world. And so we get to see how they navigate the views kind of based in large part on their own identities. Elizondo is a second generation Chicano living in California. Renee is she's mixed, Black and Indonesian, and is also coming, I don't want to say coming out as queer, but because she never quote unquote comes out.
Right.
But she really is more of a masculine presenting character.
Okay.
And I really wanted to showcase a lot of different looks and a lot of different identities with the book, because I felt like that was something that was missing, not only from the Boondocks, which I love deeply, but also a lot of the comics that I would read. And I was like, I'm from the Bay, so like if you're gonna have these different characters, like you might as well reflect kind of like what you see in the world. So the best friends are, amalgamations of folks that I've met before, as well as the other kind of supporting characters, Kwame and Rasan.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're amalgamations of folks that I've met doing activist work and things like that. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's real cool. Was it difficult to be able to create these personalities and bring these different personalities to life for each character? Was that process difficult?
No, because like I said, I originally created the characters based on different political philosophies, and you can kind of see this more in the beginning of the books, like
Mm-hmm.
volumes 1 and 2, where, like Elizondo has like a level of like Chicano nationalism. Kwame is, you could kind of describe him as black nationalist.
Okay.
But as I kept writing, I wanted to highlight some of their contradictions, right? So no one is one political philosophy to the death, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that they had these other things going on, and also like a level of humanity that,
right.
they get sad, they get happy, and all these different moods. So that was definitely something that I wanted to showcase.
Right.
But no, it wasn't particularly difficult. It was just pulling from my experiences, really.
Okay. Now, what's cool is I feel like I've met all of these characters throughout my life. Mm-hmm. Most of them in college, but I feel like I've met all these characters because as I was going through your website and I was reading information, I was kind of, as I'm reading the description of each character, laughing and kind of picturing different people who would fit these characters in my head. So I think it's a great comic book. Everybody needs to support it and make sure you learn more about Afrocentric, because I'm telling you, it's good information and it's a great comic. So
thank you, appreciate that.
no problem, no problem. So correct me if I'm wrong. You've released 3 or 4 volumes as of now.
So we released the 4th volume in 2016.
Okay.
And then this year was the year that we released the trade paperback. So what that means is that we have a book out now that is volumes 1 through 4. And I actually redid volume 1 because
right.
I wrote volume 1. I really wrote it like 2010, 2011, and then I released it. I self-published it and released it 2011. And it's just like any piece of work, your first work, you have your own critiques of it. So I wanted to make sure that it was polished and looked good for the world. So I redid it. I redid volume 1 with the help of Ron Nelson, who did the illustrations on volume 2, 3, and 4. So volume 1 was a different illustrator, so I wanted to make sure that everything looked uniform. So we redid volume 1 for this for the release of the new book. And so everything looks, I think it looks, infinitely better than it originally did. So I'm pretty proud of the product.
It's like I say, I think it's an amazing product that all of us need to support. So could you, if you don't mind, could you give us a synopsis of, you don't have to go through all the volumes, kind of a synopsis of one or a couple of the volumes and what people could expect when they're reading the comic book?
Yeah, so volume 1 is really an introduction to the 4 main characters, and I take a lot of cues from different comic books and pop culture. Mm-hmm. And for volume 1, this new redone volume 1, I took some cues from Love and Rockets.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Love and Rockets.
No, I'm not.
But it's basically, I mean, it's old school. Like, it's a Chicano punk comic that came out like in the 80s.
Okay.
And it's based around these characters that live in the Central Valley of California, and there's some ties to Mexico, but a lot of what Love and Rockets does is very kind of like talking heads. It's a lot of talking, not less action and more kind of talking between characters. Mm-hmm. But the way that they introduce the characters, I really like. So we took some like visual cues from them to introduce the characters for this new volume 1. And so we just get a sense of like, who are these characters, where are they coming from, what's kind of like their background. So that's volume 1, and then volume 2 and 3 is a larger saga around gentrification. And so basically we find Naima trying to stop gentrification in and around the university. And so she kind of enlists her friends who are reluctantly involved to stop it. And one of the things that they try to do is create the first and only anti-gentrification social networking site in the world called mydiaspora.com. So we kind of like, we follow their, their resistance to the gentrification. And then, so that's sagas 2 and 3. And then volume 4, we see Naima Pepper get a senior internship she gets a senior internship as a racial translator. So she translates black people to white people and white people to black people. And it's meant to be a really funny take on on race, basically.
Yeah. No, as you say that, I'm laughing because I'm a racial translator myself in my town. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, and it's a small country town, about 300,000 people, and being able to communicate how black people talk to white people, how white people talk to black people, and it's just funny as you say that, because I'm just thinking about my own experience as a racial translator. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the lines in volume 4, when Naima gets the job, her boss says, we picked you because you're mixed, because you're mixed black and white. And she says, well, any black person can do this job. Like, we know white people better than you know yourselves.
Right,
so, it's really like, it's like some jabs at what it means to navigate the world as a black person, really.
Exactly. I mean, but I think that your comic book will help others with their navigation through the world as a black person, but also be able to kind of get better ideas and concepts about the reality of what's going on in our communities, as you hit on gentrification. Gentrification is everywhere. It's even here in this town. Our historic black section of this town is being built up with college housing and everything. So putting that in comic book form, and you already know the results of, because when people read it and they get caught up in it, and you already have the picture, so that helps with the imagination even more. Then they become emotionally attached to the characters. You got them. That's great, and then that's great writing as well. So that's good. That's good. So your comic book, you have a collection of people who help you put it together. And so, could you tell us a little more about your team? You have Mr. Ronald Nelson and Mr. Mike Hampton. So, could you tell us a little more about them too, as well as any others who may play a role in making Afrocentric the success it is?
Yeah. So Ronald Nelson, he does the illustrations. So that means that he does the penciling and the inking of the characters, and he also plays a huge role in terms of storytelling, because effectively what he's doing is he's getting my scripts and turning them into, you know, visual representation. So he plays a huge role in making HAfrocentric come to life. And yeah, I mean, you see the work, you've seen it. So
right.
It's highly detailed. It's very, it has a lot of slick lines. It's more, I would say, like less cartoony and more realistic. But it also takes a little bit of some cues from the manga world. So Ron really does his thing on the comic book and the comic strips, and then Mike Hampton, he does the coloring and the lettering. So he does the grayscales, he does the color covers, he adds the text from the script, and yeah, we're a 3-person team, and you know, that's a pretty small team to be putting out comics, but we've been doing it now for 6 years. Okay,
that's great. And so, how did you meet these two gentlemen, and what made you decide that, okay, I want to work with these guys to make HAfrocentric a reality?
I was introduced to Ron through a friend, and I had already done volume 1, and I told him what I was thinking about, and I was hyped about where I thought HAfrocentric could go. And he really believed in the project from the beginning. And so he's been on since 2011, 2012. Yeah. So he's been on for a while. And that's how I met him. And then Mike I knew through a friend of mine who also does comic books, and I knew he did coloring. So he's been on the team for 6 years too.
Okay.
So that's, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So the characters, how did you come up with the actual look of the characters? Like, how did you all, what was that process like? Okay, this, I want her hair like this, I want this, like, how was that process?
Yeah, I mean, I had the initial concept, and what I did was I had a couple of different, like, character references. I knew that I wanted Renee to be kind of queer presenting, and so I knew, but I also wanted to make sure that, you know, if you see her look, it's a little bit like boom bap, hip hop, 90s East Coast feel. She's got like the baggy jeans, she's got the Timbs, but she also has a tie, and she has bamboo earrings.
Right.
She also has short hair. I mean, all of that was like very specific in terms of what I wanted. And then Naima, of course, the thing that I knew about Naima that I wanted to highlight was that I wanted to make sure that she always had a picture of John Brown, the famous abolitionist, and always wore a Black liberation wristband. And she's, you know, kind of femme presenting. She's got an afro, not quite blaxploitation, but a few nods to blaxploitation. And then L, I knew I wanted to make sure that he was kind of like definitively Latino, and so there's certain cues that I took to make sure that, like, you knew their identities, because you know, when you're dealing in black and white comics, it's not always clear, and so I wanted it to be clear, you know, in their costume. And then, you know, Miles has, you know, he wears his jeans and a shirt. His is pretty regular, but he always has drumsticks with him. And then Kwame's, you know, he wears jeans and a shirt, but he has a Nefertiti necklace.
Right.
So all of that is very purposeful. Rasan also, you know, when he's drawn in color, he has the Warriors colors too. So a lot of it was, you know, very purposeful.
Okay. Now, what I think is hilarious is how you describe Renee's haircut. as you call it, a mashup between Justin Bieber and the Salt and Pepper and the Push It video era. That is hilarious.
Yeah, I was trying to like really kind of make sense of her look, and like I said, I have a lot of nods to like 90s hip hop because obviously I grew up in listening to 90s hip hop. So